Welcome to The Social Currency.
I'm Tani, your resident AI nerd.
And I'm Aurélie, your work from anywhere techie.
We share real stories of connection, trust, and the relationships that shape our lives.
Let's get started. Hi, Karen. Welcome to The Social Currency. I'm very excited to have you with us today. I remember even before the big AI and tech discussions, we were already discussing tech, travel tech stuff online on LinkedIn. So yeah, I thought you were the ideal guests for that season 1 with us at The Social Currency.
Pressure then, huh? No pressure.
No. So we don't really do bios because we love here to tell people's stories, and our listeners can look at your bio anyway in the podcast notes. So what we want to ask you is basically, who are you, but the real you, not your bio, not your job title.
So who am I? So I am a country bumpkin, as we would say in the UK, somebody brought up in the country in a pretty small town. And what I realized was that was not where I was going to stay. So moved out of that when I was 18 to study in the big smoke and ended up staying in a city for a very long time. However, that hankering for the country life and animals drew me back. So now I'm back in Somerset. At the heart of it, though, is I am still a country person and very much into animal life.
I love that. Brian might be even more famous than you.
He is. Unfortunately, Brian is no more. He got bad arthritis, but Brian's been replaced by Billy and Benny now, 2 other goats. So the goat life is alive and well still.
Well, now you're going to have to explain who these people, or maybe they're not people, these folks are, because who is Billy?
So Billy and Benny are 2 goats that I have that I got after I lost my beloved Brian, who was another goat. I don't know why they're all with B's. I have no idea. My horses are all Bobby, Brenda and Bonbon as well. But yeah, they're the animals in my life.
So we talk a lot about social capital on this podcast because that's what the theme is, but usually it's related to people, but obviously you have a very close relationship with animals. And I think they can teach us a lot about relationships with people.
Well, it's interesting actually when you think about social capital. And, if I think about my ethos when I used to lead a team, I always used to say that we succeed and fail as a team. There may be one person that perhaps makes a mistake, but it doesn't matter whoever may have made the mistake. We collectively share our success, but we also share the failure. And I actually think that's what you can learn from animals as well. In actual fact, in the fact there is a hierarchy. However, they do all get on. They do all play together. They do want to have fun together. And, when I think about I've got cats, I've got dogs, I've got a sheep, I've got goats, and I've got horses. You would never know that that's 5 different species that are there when you see them interacting. The cats will come down and play with the horses. The dogs are a little bit more challenging in the fact they want to chase and run. But I do think, though, there's a lot to learn from how they work together. And that should be the same in any team. And has always been my ethos around, it doesn't matter if you're the analyst doing something. That role is just as important as if you are leading 20 people of the team and vice versa. And I think that makes a successful team, actually. And it's always been how I've worked, which is interesting in my new world because I'm a team of 1, which is really quite interesting to deal with.
I almost feel like extending. So we talk about social capital, like human to human, human to animal. And I want to bring travel on the table as well here. We believe we all work in the travel industry. So obviously we're a bit biased, but we all believe that travel is such a booster of social capital because you get to meet people or animals or have interactions you would never have had otherwise. And in your role in particular, like when you were that lead, like you had teams, I remember, because we follow each other on Instagram, I remember you showing all the photos with your team in India. Now you just came from Goa with your tan that you told us before we went live. You're involved in animal shelter. Tell us a little bit more how do you see social capital in the context of travel as well?
Well, I think traveler is an enabler to educate you, isn't it? So I think, the opportunity to travel around the world opens your eyes to things that you never knew. And I think also it gives you an absolute appreciation as well of what you may have as well, because everybody comes from different walks of life. So if I, think about the last team I managed, they were in 35 countries. I really covered every spectrum of the world, and there is different geopolitical issues going on in those countries. The richness of the country is very, very different. And I think the ability to travel gives you an appreciation of what others go through, but still deliver, still are happy, still have great lives as well. I think sometimes there is this view that the Western world has the best lives. I would absolutely and utterly challenge that. But the people that tend to say that's the case are the ones that have not actually traveled outside of their comfort zone and gone to places that are perhaps different and more challenging. And for me in particular, India became something very close to my heart. Now, interestingly, I first went to India 36 years ago, and that was Goa then. And I can tell you the Goa 36 years ago was very, very different to the Goa now. And when I first went there, it was the biggest culture shock of my travel life for sure, because that was, India was in a different place then. But what I realized, though, is as you travel to India more, it gets into your soul. And I think it's the people, actually, for sure. And I'm not just saying this because I had such a big team there and I'm still very close to a lot of them, but I think it is the people, because they have very different things and availability of different things than we would have in, in the Western cultures. And yet it really works. It's a chaotic work, but it does work. And so for me, when I left EY, as an example, I needed to keep my connectivity with India and a reason to keep going back, because it got into my soul. Hence why I started working with the Animal Sanctuary, 3 years ago now. And that keeps me going back every 6 months. And it's perfect because I get to go to Goa, which is amazing. I get to see other places of India that I've never been to. Each time I try and visit somewhere different, and I get to see some of the team that I used to work with. So there's nothing that I can complain about that at all.
It must be such a big change going from working at EY to now working at an animal sanctuary. Tell us a little bit about that transition.
It could be fairly similar, in fact, but no, I shouldn't say that. You know what? It was the right time for me to make that decision to do that. I mean, animals are a big passion, and I think the older I get, the more vocal I am about how animals are treated as well, because they don't have a voice. And I feel like if I can just spread a little bit of the view of what goes on with some of them, then it helps. Because somebody said to me, India is crazy with animals. You're never going to make a difference, but you're making a difference to those 1 or 2 or 10 or 100 dogs in that sanctuary. And that's 100 more than yesterday. But I think, though, the difference, you have to come to decisions in your life, don't you, when you've done all that you can. And I think when I was at EY, we were going through potentially the split. So audit was going to move away from consulting. That for me was really, really exciting. I spent a year working on that project. And so then in that April, when they turned around and said, it's not happening, I'm like, yeah, I'm done now. Because I was really looking forward to going into the consulting side, probably running the program and being client facing officially, which is what I'd always wanted to do as well. So when that wasn't going to happen, you make decisions for yourself, and I think to go back to running the program as I had done for the last 10 years, it was time to let somebody else take over. And it was time for me to take on something new, because ordinarily I wouldn't have stayed with a company that long. But I think that's testament to the organization and to the team that I did stay there as long. But then again, the time was right for me to take a break, think about what it was that I really wanted to do. And so, and then the Animal Sanctuary happened already, because that was always going to keep my connectivity with India. And it worked out for everybody. There was opportunities created within the travel team, meetings and events team at EY. And then I got to fulfill dreams that I wanted to do.
I love that. I'd like to add yet another ingredient to the conversation here. Tani is our AI resident, and both of us are tech geeks. So I think we have a few tech questions for you as well. So the question is, you've been a trailblazer in our industry. You've been talking AI for a long time. You've been talking automation. I remember this is how we bonded, essentially, because we really share the same view. So now, putting in the picture everything we discussed and all the progress, everything that we see with technology, social capital, the importance of living those experiences, even in person travel, How do you balance tech and people?
There seems to be such a fear out there with tech, which I just really don't understand. And I think, honestly, the fear is there because people don't understand it. There is this fear factor of actually learning about it as well. And so I was very fortunate in the fact that I got access to people that knew about all of it. So whether it be blockchain, whether it be Gen AI, RPA, etc. So I don't know how to speak the language and I need to put it in my basic brain to understand it. So I went out of my way to meet with those people and ask questions. I became extremely curious about it all. So I learned about it. And then I have to put it in layman terms because the worst thing that happens is tech people speak tech geek.
Yeah.
And it's not because they do it because they want to sound more intelligent. It's just the only way they know how to speak. I have to process, my little processor in my brain has to process that into basic conversation that becomes relatable. Once I understand that it's relatable in something that I think about, then I can express it and think about, oh, how do we use it? And so for me, I think when people get to understand it, what they will realize is that this is going to make their jobs much more interesting because it's going to take away the mundane, the crap, repetitive stuff that is so tedious and boring disappears because you let the tech do the grunt work of that. Then if you think about, a lot of companies that I work with and have worked in the past have always been in corporate services, not at EY, but when I was in the banking, I always sat within services. So everything was around how do you deliver the best service? How do you give the best to the employees? I wish that we had the tech when I was at Merrill Lynch and AIG and those companies, because we could have served our travelers so much better with what they would need by using tech, but we just didn't have the time to do it with people. And so for me, the fear factor of the tech needs to be parked because there is nothing wrong with it. It just makes jobs more interesting. Those people that don't want to embrace it are narrow-minded in my view, and I can be much more opinionated now. But there is narrow-mindedness in my view in the fact that they don't want to understand it and they don't realize the benefits that it can bring. And, I'm fortunate with who I'm working with now, getting access to much more. And I have to go through the same with some of the guys at Headbox and Clarisight in particular and Badge, like, right, you need to stop talking the tech geek stuff to me and let me process it so I really understand what this. And thank God they're so patient with me. I think sometimes they think, who the hell is this person that's working with us? But when you see what it can do, it's mind-blowing, I have to say. And that's what makes things so exciting. Honestly, I think our industry is just slow to pick it up, and it is still slow. We were recently, Aurelia, with Amadeus Citric. What they are doing is mind-blowing, and I love it. And more people need to see it. And I'm Graham and Simone that are there. I'm not doing this as an advert for you, but I have to
Maybe they're
say,
listening.
I was super impressed, though, with the tech that they have there. And I think more people need to see what's out there and the difference it can make and not be afraid of it. We're beholden a little bit to legacy suppliers out there that don't move fast enough. They're like turning tankers, and I understand why, because I worked for a tanker, it felt like, in EY in some ways. But on the other hand, though, you've got to drive change, because if you don't, the industry will get left behind. And when the industry gets left behind, you don't attract the people in it. And as long as I'm still in it, I will continually talk about this because it worries me, because it's a fantastic industry that we're all passionate about, but it does need to move forward to attract talent. It really does.
I'm a huge proponent of that message. I talk a lot about AI. It's my passion, and I think it will change the world. But one of the things that worries me is I talk to a lot of travel buyers, and their companies either don't have a policy or their policy is don't use it. And I find that so distressing, because this technology is coming whether or not we want it to. And if you don't lean in and you don't figure it out and you don't process what's happening with this, new innovation, I really worry about where you're going to be in 5 to 10 years.
Do you know what, though? I would challenge every single one of them if their companies don't use it. I bet you every single company uses it. They just don't know where they're using it. How on earth did the COVID jabs come so quickly? That was not people doing that. That was tech doing that. I mean, that's just one example. But banking, for sure. Banking are using RPA, tech. Gen AI to deliver whatever it is they need to do. So the problem is the travel managers are not asking the right questions internally. I've done a survey recently of something that I'm working on where one of the questions was, are you targeted with using Gen AI? And this was to travel managers. 70% came back and said yes. Most of them didn't know how they were going to do it though. And it's like, well, then embrace a startup, because then you can tick a box because they will be using it as an example. And I think sometimes people are trying to hide behind the fact that there's not a policy when in actual fact, they will be using it internally already.
Do you think that's an excuse then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I said that very quickly.
But it's funny because I see some sort of a pattern here. Same, I've been advocating for that. Even recently, I was on stage in Oslo for the Nordic Business Travel Summit. I was moderating the event, and it was around, let's get real in an AI world. So I had a little game, between each session, we had cards like a robot or human. And I had a little game, who would you rather do this, that? Anyway, the feedback we received at the end of those 2 days were, this was amazing because I was scared or I didn't have enough information to be able to absorb it, to digest, and to really understand how it can help me or what it does. So I think first phase is really education and repeat and educate and educate. But the pattern I see, and this is really my thing, like work from anywhere, bleisure, blended travel, no matter how you call it. I mean, it's been 12 years and it's still not really a topic in the business travel industry, talking about, things that are a bit slow to move. And yet it has so many benefits for an organization. When you just allow your people, you give them a little bit more freedom to go out there and explore.
I mean, I think the thing is as well, though, if you want to have impact within your organization, if you start to understand what your business does and then how you link into what they do, then you actually start having much better and much more meaningful conversations with stakeholder because it becomes relatable. So if you speak to somebody from audit as an example, which for sure will be using automation to deliver what they do, and then you talk about how you're using it, or if you're in consulting, how you can give them examples of how you're using alternative tech that they potentially can go out and sell, it changes the conversation. They then buy into what you're trying to deliver within the program. It takes effort and work, but I used to say to the team, it's much better you having conversations internally with stakeholders than going on a show round of a hotel, quite frankly, because you are looking at a hotel as a view, but you can't represent 75,000 travelers and whether they're going to really like that or not. I think sometimes effort can be misplaced. Yes, there may be some times that you need to do that type of thing, but there's much better conversations to have that drives bigger impact within an organization, internally speaking to stakeholders and leadership, than actually doing some of the other things. And I think, unfortunately, people have a comfort zone of what they enjoy and they think that adds the value. I would challenge that. And also, if we want to elevate the role of the travel manager or the travel meetings and events leader, you've got to behave differently as well and have those C-suite conversations and have meaningful business to business conversations that are relatable. And tech can absolutely and utterly help that. Quite frankly, why do you need to go on show rounds anyway when you've got all these 3D views? I mean, I know I can put this in for Headbox. Headbox do amazing 3D studio views of properties. You don't need to go and look at a show round any longer.
Yeah.
You can just do it online.
Digital twins are also starting to become a reality. Annie is getting really excited here. It's her topic. I can see her face lighting up.
Well, I do want to bring it back to people because you said something earlier, Karen, and it struck me. You mentioned how curiosity has really been a big element in your success in understanding technology. And I think curiosity is a really important trait that helps you, one, understand technology, but also develop your relationships and your social capital. So you can be curious about technology, you can be curious about people. So how do you think about that? And how do you think other people can either be curious or build their curiosity muscle, if you will, so that they can be better at all these things?
Do you know what? I think there's a fear that people always think they need to know the answers to everything. And they have, they get asked a question. They, rather than say, I don't know, I'll find out, they always give an answer. If you think about somebody comes to you to talk about, Tony, what you said about Gen AI, you love talking about that because that's your passion. And so that's what I found when I went to people internally. I said, you know what? I don't know anything about blockchain. Can you help me understand it? That blockchain expert loved telling me all about it.
Yeah.
Now, Christ, sometimes it was like, whoa, hang on, because my head was ready to explode. But I think, though, we forget that people love talking about their area of expertise.
Yeah.
So give them the opportunity to speak, and then you learn, and I am never afraid to say, I actually don't know the answer to that. And I'm working on something at the minute where I'm talking about VC funding. I have no idea about that whatsoever. And every day when I have the conversation with one of these people that I'm working with, I'm like, you're going to have to talk me through it again because I really don't understand and I've got to process it. But I do think there is this worry that people feel like they have to be the most intelligent person in the room. Well, actually, if you are, you're not going to learn. And I don't want to be the most intelligent person in the room. And I used to always try and hire people that were more intelligent than me because then I could grow with them, and everybody adds a balance. So that's what I would say to that.
And it all comes down to limiting beliefs, that we have, like our belief system. I always like to, ask people, like, take a moment and write down a list of like your own limiting beliefs, but also your empowering beliefs.
Yeah.
So maybe you can tap into that, in times of doubts. And speaking about social capital and curiosity, hence the importance of having the right people around you as well, to have like that circle of trust where you can learn and grow together.
I mean, building a network, you've got your internal network wherever you work, but that external network is really important. And I've always had people outside of where I actually was currently working that I could call on, and like external mentors and that. And it's crucial. And now I have people that I will just always keep in contact with because one, enjoy their company, but two, I learn from them and we can have great debate and great conversation. And I think that's really, really important, actually. And you can grow that anytime. It doesn't mean that it has to be somebody you've known for 30 years. You may meet somebody now that suddenly will become that person for the next 10 years as well. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, with the people I'm working with now in the startups, there's some people there that they will be friends for life, and there'll be people that I will go to ask for advice because I learn from them, and that's how it should be.
Speaking of, I believe that in our life, our careers, there are a few people that really made an impact in our career, like we learned from them. And who would that be for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. So HRG, when I worked for them, gave me a lot of opportunity. And so, I was always the person they said, would you do this? And I was like, yeah. I never thought about what I was going to be doing, but the answer was always yes.
Like how fast you always say, yeah.
Exactly that. And so there was somebody at HRG that, became my external mentor when I left HRG, and I never lost contact with that person. And he was like a great advisor. And then there was somebody at Merrill Lynch who gave me the opportunity to move to New York. He saw faith in me, putting me in a global role in an investment bank, which was fairly unique at that time, and I remember it was so funny. There was a Wall Street benchmarking group in the US, and they had to take a vote as to whether I could be part of the Wall Street benchmarking group when I moved there. And it's like, I'm working for Merrill Lynch. Isn't that part of Wall Street? And it was just because, and I hate to say this, it was all US people and me. But anyway, I got accepted. So that was great. And I got some great friends from there still. But I think, Mike, who was this guy at Merrill Lynch, he gave me a lot of opportunity at Merrill Lynch. And then when the whole thing imploded at Merrill Lynch, and then he went to AIG. He then brought me into AIG as well. And so I have a lot to be grateful for him, for sure. And he was super senior when he was always actually, but a great guy to learn from in how he managed things. And then at EY, for sure, Larry Phelan, who many people may know because he was on stage at ITM. He was a brilliant, brilliant boss and really gave me the free rein to be as creative as I wanted to be. He reined me in a little bit, but not too much. And I really know that he enabled me to become this creative individual and innovative because he just let me get on with it. Some of the things probably I didn't tell him about that I was doing, if the truth be known, but that was all right. He's coming to stay with me next week, so obviously we've not fallen out over it either. But yeah, I mean, I think I've been very lucky with people that I've worked with. There's a flip side to that, though, where I was at one company, and I won't name that, where I was told that I may be able to get into sales, but I may not be quite good enough. And that gave me the biggest fire in my belly. And when I finally got the opportunity, when they decided that I was good enough to be in sales, I was going to be the top salesperson, and I was. And I think there's a flip side, isn't it? You get challenged by somebody that actually doesn't give you the opportunity, and then that stokes the fire like you cannot imagine. And I'm actually very grateful for that individual now, because even though he pushed me back, he actually drove me really forward.
Interesting. So don't tell Karen no, because she'll prove me wrong.
Exactly that. Yeah, exactly.
One of the things I love most about the travel industry is how tight knit it is. And you meet people in this industry working with, and they stay for a lifetime. And even though they may change roles or companies, you still see all these familiar faces. And what's amazing about that is that you can develop these long-term relationships with people that you can lean on in the future, especially in challenging times. And it's really amazing to see how, like, I've been in the industry now for 30 years, and it's just, you make lifelong friends, like you mentioned.
You do. It's funny, actually, when I was at AIG, so when I resigned from AIG to go to EY, the guy that I spoke about earlier on, he said to me, write the job that will make you stay. And they offered me an opportunity to become the CAO in Asia Pac, living in Japan. It was a massive, massive opportunity. I went to my HRG mentor, I'll never forget this, and I said, I've got these two opportunities. I can run one of the biggest programs that needs to be globalized in the world, or I can go and do this. And he said to me, where is your passion? Where is your passion? I'm like, it's travel, meetings and events industry. He goes, you've just answered your own question then. And to your point, Tani, that's it. It's the people. It is a community that keeps you. And I knew then I made the decision that I was a lifelong travel, meetings and events person, and I was never going to be anybody else. And I'm really, really happy with that as well.
Well, Karen, sadly, this is all we have time for. Any final words of wisdom that you can leave our listeners with?
It goes back to a little bit of what you said. You laughed already when you said, Karen, you always say yes quickly. That's it. Just say yes. If you ever get given an opportunity to do something, just say yes. Even if you don't know how to do it, you'll be able to find people that will be able to help you figure out how you can do it. But take and seize every opportunity that's put your way, because that's one thing I always did, and I really have never regretted that. And then the other one is, for sure, be curious and go out there, and don't be afraid to ask questions, to learn more and build a network. You know, your network becomes your go-to people. They're friends for sure, but without realizing it, they become mentors too. And I think just building your network and realizing that you can't do things on your own and you don't need to have all the answers, you can go and get them. That can be the best advice that I can give anybody. I still continue to grow my network with new people, and that keeps it real, it keeps it exciting, and it keeps it fresh. And that's what you need to do. The last thing you want is to get up to go to work and think, oh, Jesus, another day. You want to get up and think, yay, I'm going to work, you know, and that's how I feel every time I go into, whether it be Silver Door, Headbox, Badge, and Clarasite. All of them bring something very unique and different for me, and I love it. And that's what you need to do.
I love that. So you have that positive fire in your belly now.
I've always had it, you know. I would never not want to have that.
Yeah.
I've loved every company I've worked with, and I've loved all the team that I've worked with, but you've got to keep it alive. And I think when it comes to the point when you think, I've now been here a long time and I really can't make a difference any longer, then it's time to move on, you know. And it's hard moving on, you know. You're leaving a lot of people, but you know what? You never look back, that's for sure.
To finish, Karen, we'd love you to leave a gift for our listeners. So it can be a book, a song, a place, a person, a tool, anything that has impacted you lately and that you would recommend to our listeners.
The only gift that I can say that people should have is travel. Get out of your comfort zone and explore the world, because you don't know what you've got until you've seen what others may not have. And for me, that's been the biggest thing. You know, my husband and I still go to different places. We don't want to go back to the same place. India is an exception, but we don't go to the same place because we still feel that we are young enough to be able to be adventurous and explore. And I think everybody should do that. Going back to the same place actually limits the opportunity of the world that's out there. And I know, Aurelie, you and I like follow each other on Instagram and we both go to different places. I'm doing the gorillas in Rwanda next year, just so you know. You'll be able to look at that.
I might join.
Yeah. You're welcome to come,
We
but I
should.
think that's what you need to do is like
With our
open
laptops.
the world. Exactly. It'll be a Richard Attenborough or David Attenborough moment, won't it, when he was with the gorillas? Yeah, but that would be my thing, is see the world because it opens your eyes.
Oh, I love it. Such a great gift. Well, Karen, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a great conversation. I learned so much and I feel so inspired and energized, and hopefully our listeners will too.
Well, thank you for having me. I feel flattered that you wanted me to speak, but thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to The Social Currency. Find out more about today's guest in the show notes.
If this story resonated with you, share it with your people, subscribe, and leave a review.
And most importantly, reach out to someone who made a difference in your life.
Because this is how we grow our social capital.
Until next time.
Whew.